Okay, Fr Brian McKevitt, the editor of Alive. In the current issue of Alive, you say that this amendment, if passed, will lay the groundwork for a massive transfer of authority over young people from their parents to the state. What makes you say that?
Well, basically, I think it's appalling that we are even considering putting this amendment in the Constitution. I think it is so destructive of family life. It is so destructive. So I'll just come to that in a moment. It's of family life, of the rights of the child and the rights of parents. The rights of the child to be protected by his or her parents, and the rights of parents to protect their children. And when we're talking about children here, we have to remember we're not just talking about little toddlers. We're talking also about teenagers right up to the age of 18. And I would say that this amendment, to a large extent, is a confidence trick, in the sense that it's putting forward this idea that it's really concerned with the small number of children that are very vulnerable, and that we have to do something in order to protect. First of all, the law is quite adequate to protect children at the moment. The failure in protecting children was not due to the Constitution, it was due to the state and the way the state intervened in situations. But what we're proposing here, what the real agenda, I think, behind this amendment is to give the state the right to intervene in all families.
Well, but Article 41 is still there. The state recognises the family as the natural, primary and fundamental unit group of society, and as a moral institution possessing inalienable and imprescriptible rights antecedent and superior to all positive law. That's still there. Yeah, it's not changed.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like saying you have a bucket of fresh milk and you put a cup of slurry into it, and then you say, well, you know, the milk was still there, the fresh milk is still there, but we don't need to worry now. This is really a jug full of slurry going into this whole, changing everything. But just if I could kind of make the case about the rights, what it says is the state will protect and vindicate the rights of the children. There is no mention at all of parents. There's no mention of the state helping parents to vindicate the rights of children.
Okay, well, I'll take that point up with the Minister, but there is a mention of parents, there is a mention of family in Article 41, in Article 42. Yeah, so you know, these issues are already covered in other parts of the Constitution.
This amendment will affect the interpretation of all of those previous clauses or sections of the Constitution. What we're saying here is that this, if you read I think the fundamental thing is people have to read this text. They have to keep reading it because there's an awful lot of waffle going on about everything that this is going to do. We have to look at the actual words and analyse the words. And the first thing we notice is that the state, in the first clause, in the first section of this amendment, parents are simply ignored, they are treated as irrelevant, they are simply pushed aside. The state is now moving in to protect the rights of teenagers against their parents.
Okay, well, let me put that point to Minister Francis Fitzgerald. Fr McKevitt is saying that parents have been ignored.
Well, obviously I reject Fr McKevitt's interpretation of this article, and so do many, many other people. This is not a confidence trick. This is about recognising that over decades we have failed children in Ireland, and that we need to do something about it.
Sorry,
we need
Francis.
to do something.
Sorry.
Let me just say, we need to do something at constitutional level. We also need to do a lot of other things in legislation to make sure our children are safe. We need stronger legislation, which I and Minister Shatter are moving towards as well. We're doing that. We need to reform how we deliver services to children and families as well. But let's focus on this constitutional change. There is absolutely no question of undermining parents. What we're doing is we're examining those situations, and we have 1,500 children every year where it's confirmed that they have been physically or sexually abused or neglected. We have 34,000 referrals to our services. There are situations where children are physically and sexually abused, and where the state has an obligation, for reasons of the common good and protecting those children, to take clear action to protect them. That's what this referendum is about, being clear about that. And parents aren't mentioned in Article 42A because they're already in the Constitution. They are absolutely and totally support it. The presumption in Irish law is that children are, and by the Supreme Court should I say, the children, the best place for children is with their families, except in exceptional cases where they are at risk, where they need to be protected. And let me just finish by saying that the state, what is the state in these circumstances? The state in these circumstances is foster families. It's people offering alternative care to children in need of care. And it's about looking at the situations where decisions are made about these children and how the court proceedings should be conducted, listening to the views of the child. They've been ignored in so many reports.
Okay, Brian McKevitt.
Sorry. First of all, the state in this case is politicians, social workers and judges. Let's be clear on that.
What's your problem with that?
I mean, the Minister has kind of given us a different interpretation of the state. It's foster parents. We're not told what these rights are. People are being asked to vote for the rights of the child, yet it is not spelled out what specifically these rights are. We'll be told sometime in the future, we're told. Basically, it's like signing a blank cheque, and only this time we are not drawing, the government is not drawing on people's money, it's drawing on the future happiness and security of all children. We have to remember that. And what the state, if we look at what possible rights we're talking about, where are we going to look for these rights? To the courts? Where are they going to look? They're going to look to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The Minister is not saying that, because if people realise that that's what it's really about, there is no way they would vote for this amendment.
And I see from your editorial in Alive that you're not very keen on the United Nations, left-wing radicals, anti-family left-wingers and so on. That's your view of the United Nations?
If you look at the convention, look at the Articles 13 to 18, I think it is, and look at the list of rights that teenagers and young people are given. The right to privacy, that nobody may intervene with the child's right to privacy. So if a child is getting text, can the parent intervene? If a teenager is looking at something on the internet, can a parent write? And suppose the parent does intervene and the child says, this is an infringement of my right to privacy. What happens then? Where does the state go then? The state sends in somebody or has some kind of a tribunal or something to settle. So, sorry, just what's happening, we're changing the nature of the family. At the moment, the family is parents and children, and what we'll end up with is parents against children backed by the state.
But it says Article 41 of the Constitution recognises the family as the natural, primary and fundamental unit.
We're now changing the very meaning of the word family from parents and children to parents backed by against children, backed by the state, who are upholding their this collection of extraordinary rights.
Just put that to the Minister.
Yes. Well, I would say this is scaremongering. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child has been signed by every country in the world except 2, actually. It's one of the most widely signed conventions on human rights that have ever gone before countries, and Ireland signed it. The Vatican was the fourth state that signed the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, actually. I would say that in relation to parents, certainly we're not doing anything in relation to the definition of the family, not at all, no question of that. And I do believe that what Fr McKevitt is saying is a disproportionate response, an extreme response to a well-balanced amendment, and an amendment in fact that uses the word proportionate in terms of intervention in families, which assumes that any intervention by the state where a child may be at risk, the very first intervention is to support the family, and family resource centres up and down the country, counselling, parenting courses. There are so many people reaching out to support families, but there are situations where we do have to protect children and where some terrible harm can happen to children in some families, and I would continue to say it is exceptional. There is no history whatsoever of the state wanting, or the Supreme Court indeed, or our courts, wanting to micromanage families in the way that Fr McKevitt describes in relation to texting or discipline. That remains, of course, completely unchanged and is not impacted by this referendum or these amendments whatsoever.
A very, very brief final word to you, Fr McKevitt.
I think basically the government is depending on getting this amendment passed on 3 things: on ignorance, on the lemming philosophy of life, trust our great leaders and follow them over the cliff, and basically on a kind of moral blackmail that is kind of saying, oh, if you really care about children, you have to vote for this amendment, when in fact I would say if you really care about children, the last thing you should do is vote for this amendment.
Okay, Father McKevitt, thank you for joining us. Minister Fitzgerald will be talking to you again in